You managed to block out most of what happened earlier, and right now your focus is on the makeshift fire you and the others have made from the cotton inside the broken down seats of the plane. Soon enough, the others begin to talk and say what's on all your minds. Although she said it was alright, and she gave her blessing for our survival, you can't get the image of her out of your mind. A pediatrician, a mother, someone with a life outside your own. Nobody here was willing to do the dirty work, so you stood up above them in the cold and did what needed to be done. The taste was something resembling that of gamey pork, and since the crash of Flight 1326, just 2 weeks prior, you and your team have done the unthinkable. This was, however, your last feeling of emotion, or any connection to humanity you had left. Tonight, you'd begun to go through a transformation. One that hurt, feeling like a wild fever as you have a feeling of bugs making their way through your skin, tightening every second. Next is the tearing at your fever-heated face, with your untrimmed fingernails and endless cramping pain that you can feel in your stomach from a horrific hunger as if you hadn't eaten your fill from the previous night. Craving something familiar, and soon enough the thoughts of the rest of your group pops up. What's one more bite going to hurt? Finally, your mind can only think of the endless hunger as you stand over the last body. You're the final survivor. Best make your way home to find more. And not long after you finish off your last of your meal, a long trek through the woods leads you to a cabin light in the mountain, drawing your attention. Your stomach begins to cramp, so you feel yourself fall to all fours as you race towards the light. And hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of A Delve Deeper. I'm your host, Joey, and I'm here with my co host, Nate.
That's me.
And this is a podcast where we dive into all things dark, paranormal, and cryptid, each one with a story, origin, and more, leading us to a truth that may have been long forgotten, and I hope to make your skin crawl, your heart race, and your vision haze. And come with us as we attempt to take a delve deeper. Well, after that, I have got to say, welcome everybody to the first episode. I am super excited to be here. This is something that I've been super passionate about forever. And on my other podcast, I talk about other things that are more D&D related, but this is something that uh, I just found that I have such an interest in that I needed to just talk about it and see what we can get for feedback and everything. And I'm here with my co-host Nate, and it's gonna be so much fun, man, to get into this.
Yes, I am super excited. I've also been passionate about cryptids and paranormal for a long, long time, and it's nice to meet somebody who shares my passion and enthusiasm, and we're just gonna nerd out over cryptids. That's like the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be super fun. And for those of you that are here for the first time, obviously, you guys are gonna know that we go over all of these different cryptids, hauntings, different paranormal things, including aliens, whatever. And we're gonna really try to get as much of a story as we can. Try to get all the information that we can that we don't usually see, get personal stories, reports, anything like that, and we'll pull them up and talk about them here. I really plan on having this kind of give you more information as a viewer, just to feel that there's like some semblance that this thing is got a lot more lore to it than what we find out there regularly in TV shows or just in media in general. I'd kind of like to talk about the first little thing here is I'm gonna just kind of talk about myself a little bit and my background. I grew up kind of in a Christian household, from a young age. So talking about the paranormal, talking about the different scary monsters or magic or anything like that was very, very, very frowned upon in the household. And you don't talk about it when you go to the church. If you know, you know. If you grew up in it, you absolutely know what I'm talking about. And so from there, I kind of really pushed away from the Christian side of myself and everything like that. And I kind of developed my own thoughts, my own feelings, and my own kind of views of how things are. And personally, I think that all of the paranormal things, the hauntings, and the cryptids are all so awesome and don't get talked about enough in terms of like there's so much that gets skipped over or transformed over the years that I think to just get into it and just kind of like talk about what's happened, what's changed, where the sightings are, the reports, it'll just be so interesting to kind of go through that here with Nate. So that's kind of my background.
Yes, I very similar background here. Grew up in a heavily Christian household, and then as I grew older, I asked more questions. Um,
That's definitely
and
where it starts.
Yep, and now we're here and we're doing something awesome. Like you said, it doesn't get talked about enough, and there is so much lore. There's so many witnesses and just things to dive into. So I'm excited. I'm stoked.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm actually gonna get right into this with our first known mention of the Wendigo actually appears in what looks like a 1636 report by a man named Paul Lejeune, who's a French Jesuit missionary who was living among the Algonquin people in what is Quebec, Canada, and Lejeune described kind of like a woman who warned of like kind of like these people had eaten some of the tribal members nearby, and this tribe would eat would eat a great many more of them if they were not called somewhere else and they left.
Oh, gee.
So that first little written report is pretty much saying like there's a tribe of these people, they've kind of gone insane, and for whatever reason they're picking off the Algonquins, and so the Algonquin tribe had to move to prevent themselves from being picked off further. Which, I'll be honest, Nate, like I feel like this could definitely be just like a random cannibalistic tribe. Now, for as far as the actual like Wendigo storyline of it, they have a whole thing that's like their belief of cannibalism and exactly where it comes from with the Wendigo. But I think it's just such an interesting little tidbit that they had these people, this cannibalistic tribe in Quebec, around that area, and they kind of just turned it into something that was like this horrific beast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean there were other cannibalistic tribes. I know there's one somewhere in the deep south of Texas way back when,
Hmm.
and they were just known for being cannibalistic. What's really interesting I think about that first one being in Quebec is that was the first reported sighting, and the most recent reported sighting was in September of 2021 in Ontario, Canada. So pretty close.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that you find a lot in northern countries and states, just because it is such an association within the cold regions of the world. And I even have a couple of reports that were found all the way in like Russia as well. They have something similar, and that is just goes to show the reach of this native story.
Right. Yeah, and Russia was like they claimed that it had eaten like 30 people or something like that, right?
Yeah, it took out. It was the explanation for a small town just disappearing. That most
Right.
likely, I did have an article pulled up about how they thought, like scientists obviously had gone out and checked it out over the years, and they pretty much think that like they just got up and left and then died somewhere out in the snow. But the stories from the locals is essentially a Wendigo came and took out the whole town and just put them back into its lair, which they tend to be in caves apparently, which is like a big thing. So very, very interesting.
Definitely. Must be trying to get out of the cold.
The next part I kind of want to go over is like I do want to talk about like what it looks like and the idea of like where and how it came to be. So a typical Wendigo, if anybody's played Until Dawn, that is a very close representation of the Wendigo. But essentially, it's a malnourished person with graying skin that resembles a dead person, somebody who's dead. And they have elongated ears, their teeth kind of go down to points, and they become this sort of like underdark-ish looking goblin. And you can see their bones through their skin, and the whole time they've developed their fingernails into these claw-like appendages. And so it has changed over the years, though, and as we've kind of gotten into our new age, it's developed a Wendigo slash Skinwalker type feel. Like the skull, the deer skull with the antlers is like really commonplace now. And I mean, I'll tell you, it's awesome and it looks really cool. As much as it's just kind of like a steer off from what it was. The reason that I know that that had happened and that kind of occurred over the years is that as more people had gotten to know the Wendigo and as more people had gotten to know the Skinwalker, they are similar when you start like looking through the different histories and everything. They're from a tribe. A tribe has given them a story, and from that tribe they have different stories, and from over here they have different stories of it. And soon enough, people start sharing these stories over and over and over and over again, and it kind of slams together into a amalgamation of the two. And so that's where we get like, oh, they have really, really enhanced height. They have enhanced strength. They're stronger than the average man. They're doing all these different things, and on top of it, it can transform. It can scream out and make men crazy, women crazy, people crazy. And so the difference between the two, I think, is so heavy as it is right now that it would be completely insane to see what I think the original tribe of the Algonquin people would think of today's Wendigo. Just because I find it so interesting.
Yeah, I definitely would be interested in seeing someone's like take on like what it is now compared to if there was like a cave drawing or something that they knew of.
Mm-hmm. Because I know they had pottery, and a lot of the stories, which I'll get into one now that I had found, is that from the Algonquin people, from pretty much what Paul Lejeune had found out, uh, he pretty much had talked to them about this and kind of asked for further instruction on it, and he pretty much was told that the tribe at one point had hired somebody who was like their top hunter to kill some of these Wendigos, um, and they were infected for their greed, which wasn't necessarily all cannibalism. They state that it was actually the initial greed that they had for wealth and power that had turned them into a Wendigos, essentially. Um, the thing was is that after your transformation, you hunger for human being. So it's really interesting to see that they in this story there's like this tribe of people that hire a hunter, and you ask one man to kill essentially what is 9 Wendigos in one go. And to me, that's insane. Like, that story is
I
crazy
believe in you.
because they talk about it like that. Good.
They just send him on his way, saying, "Good luck. Take a stick. You'll be all right."
Yeah, essentially, that's pretty much what they did, man. And it's insane because in the story, these people already established that the Wendigos are things. Like, they exist with enhanced strength, enhanced speed. They have, like, they can move unlike any person can. But the thing is like, you're asking one dude, and you would think, like, when you think back into like tribal times, it's really easy to know that they always hunt in groups. Because if you don't know, attacking something with many happens to be better for you in the end if you're instead of just going one on one. You kind of have backup, so it's definitely an interesting story because there's 7 sons and both parents have kind of succumbed to the same curse throughout the story. And when he went to go find them, he had encountered that they had so many different trials, and he kind of found himself having sympathy for these people as they just went about their day and they kind of lived normal lives. And obviously, he's been watching them, he's making sure that they don't do anything crazy. So, within that same week that he's been there, he found himself kind of viewing them just like he had for the past, like, 5 4 days. uh but he kind of noticed, like, oh, these people take in 2 lost hunters. And you also have to understand too, this is like Quebec, so it's really cold, so there's
Right.
snow everywhere. So it's one of those places that like snows very frequently throughout the year. So if you take that into account as well, it's the fact this guy even survived a week by himself is actually really astonishing. But he pretty much sees them taking these lost hunters, and later on he sees them just like get torn into and they get consumed pretty much. Quote, like I said, like in the story, it's literally he this feeling wouldn't last, like his feelings for them wouldn't last, as he watched the family take in a few lost hunters only to tear into them and consume them as if they were no more than pigs, which
Jeez.
is insane, an insane sentence, because that just shows you like the absolute raw power that these have to just I
Yeah.
mean, okay, we're talking The Walking Dead. They just dip their hand into a guy and tear him apart, right? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's not like they
That's
they
insane.
butchered him with knives. They just ripped into him.
Yep, yep, and it's crazy because it's pretty much the hunter ends up going up to them and starts talking to them after he sees this the day after. And he's kind of like, oh, hey, I'm just lost, I'm looking for a place to stay, do you have any food or water or anything? And so they kind of like look over and they're pretending to be friendly the whole time, right? Like,
Yeah.
they know what they're gonna do to this guy. So they're like, oh yeah, of course, like, we got water, we got food, just come in. And he kind of takes these this family, like the 7 sons and whatnot. He's like, hey, do you mind if I help you hunt or fish? Like, I've been doing that for a very long time. And so the kind of parents of this group are like, yeah, sure, you should take my husband and go fish. There's a fishing hole nearby. So they get to this fishing hole, and essentially the hunter takes out the father, who's like the big bad Wendigo of the group. Um, and so after that, the 7 sons have been sent to go get like firewood. At this point, they're going around doing their own thing. So he kind of grabs the mother while they're doing that, and from the story, he pulls her to the fishing hole, and essentially does the same thing, but just gets her to come over and says, hey, like, your husband is drowning. We need to get him out of there now." And so she comes over, runs over, and before she knows it, she's pierced with a spear, pretty much. And the seven sons, he continues to do this chain, one after another, after another, after another, and he takes them out silently and takes them out pretty much without ever awakening the Wendigo side of them. But from his sightings and the story that he carries, uh, they did transform to eat those hunters. And it's crazy to think that, like, this dude took out essentially 9 people. And, like, the sons weren't, in the story, they're not children. They're grown adults. So this man is like the Rambo of the tribe. I was like, that's insane, dude. Insane.
That is crazy. I wonder how they worded it. I mean, do you think they were super cheesy about it and like basically asked him to stay for dinner?
I mean, dude. I'm imagining the classic, like, oh, did they imagine, like, oh, they're gonna invite us to dinner, and then like they put the all the stuff together, and they're like, oh, where's dinner? It's like, you are the dinner. And
Right?
as
Yeah.
it becomes that kind of scenario. And so I think it's such a weird story, though, because like you can also take into account that like this guy might be like, oh man, there was 9 of them, and like I took them out one by one, and it's like there's a little bit of
Oh,
arrogancy
like the
in the
fisherman who always
storytelling.
catches the biggest fish.
Yeah, he grabs the kraken out of the water, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think it's definitely one of those stories that when he talks about it and writes it down, I think there's like either mistranslation or something, because it, to me, it just seems so insane that one tribe would only send one guy to do it.
Yeah,
Like,
unless they
I don't
were
know.
working with them and they're like, "We'll just get rid of this guy. We'll just send him to go get ate. Maybe he was annoying them or something." And then he comes back. He's like, "Yeah, I killed that whole
He comes
family." And
back,
they're
he's
like,
like, "Yeah,
"Oh."
dude, it's me." Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
we didn't think you were gonna come back, dude. But uh, it that is so crazy to me. Like I said, I love that story. It's just a small little tidbit and a small little thing that happened that got told through the Algonquin people to this man. And we actually have something later that's like there was actually a few instances of murder and cannibalism in North America that was blamed on the Wendigo, and it was included a case in Alberta, Canada, from 1879, where there was a Cree hunter and a trapper named Swift Runner from a tribe, and he claimed that a Wendigo spirit had entered his dreams and told him to eat his entire family. By the way,
Oh man, I'm just trying to picture
and
what
this was
that'd
a
be
real
like,
thing.
just
Like this was a
sleeping.
100% documented thing. Yeah, and this is where it gets insane, because it's like this guy claimed that a Wendigo had entered his dreams and just was like, "Hey, eat your family." So he did.
You should
He
just
just
eat them.
did. Yeah.
That's a great idea I had, me.
I it's like, okay. I will say it's so interesting because like where does the Wendigo's power kind of like halter? Because at this point, there's not very many stories about like Wendigos entering dreams, right? Like they're a spirit. They are a spirit of hunger, spirit of like famine, stuff like that. So like
Right.
there has to
Greed.
be, yeah, something here. Like to me, I can kind of see the dream aspect of it being a thing, but since we don't really have any like previous logs or previous stories that really hone in on that, it just makes this seem so insane to just have it'd be like if I woke up tomorrow and I'm like, man, that dream was insane. Well, I guess I mean it did tell me to kill my family, so I mean, what am I gonna do?
Got no
I have
choice,
no
really. It's a
power to
real
stop
shame.
this. he said to. So like his word is the law, man. I'm just saying. But this guy was tried for murder, and obviously he was found guilty because they caught the dude like mid
Right.
feast,
Oh,
which is
jeez.
disgusting. They found him like hands deep into the stomach of his wife, apparently. Uh, and so that's quite disturbing to just be like, oh, like you come up to a cabin and you're just checking on your buddy, and you're like, hey, how's it going? And you open the door, and he's like, there's just this bloody scene, and he's just going at it. And that to me is like the thing about cannibalism for me is like it is so unhinged in a lot of ways for
Oh
me,
yeah.
because it's like you're thinking about a person, right? And it could be me, you, my wife, whatever. But like eating another creature, you don't think much of it because you're like, oh, it's like, it's a cow, it's a pig, it's whatever. But like it is interesting to me to think of like different places as well, like the Donner Party specifically, when they get trapped and they end up eating a person. And we hear of cannibalism all over all the time from people getting trapped, getting stuck, getting, trying to go through mountain passes when they really shouldn't be going through the mountain pass. Um,
Yeah.
and so I always wonder to myself, like, what point do you turn that off to be like, we have to survive and eat this person?
Right. Yeah. But it's also like a slippery slope because once that first one gets ate, how long till the next one, and then how long till the ill effects of eating a person affect you to the point where you only see people as food.
Well, that's exactly what kind of happened with like the Donner Party too. Is like they were just going one by one, and since it's so cold, the person isn't decomposing. So at what
Right.
point, like they come down months later and they're like two. There's two or three of them versus the like 16, 15 they had, right? Which is like,
Right.
that to me was something that really, really stuck with me when I heard about it. And I hear about these other cannibalistic tribes or people. It's just like, at what point, like you're saying, Nate, is do you just stop thinking about it? Do you just like, do you just, it just like, oh, okay, I mean, I'll probably take a fillet today. Yeah, just
All
take it off the
right.
bit right there. Yeah, I'm like that. That's got to be something like that, because when they come back, a lot of the time they don't really write about it. Like people don't really talk about it, and it's understandable. I mean, you probably don't want to talk about eating your entire family, but
Right. Yeah.
there is some documents of people saying like, "Oh, here's what it tasted like. This is what it felt like." And honestly, like I know a lot of people, a lot of them actually talk about how after you take off the skin, you begin to desensitize because you can't recognize the person.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. At that point, it's that person has become meat to you. Basically, you're butchering them. So that's what you do. You butcher meat. And it's just like when you get to that desensitized, how do you go back to normal society and stuff? Because it's not like you can just be like, yeah, so I ate Susie the other day, needed salt, but um, and then I
Dude,
think,
and that's so nuts to me though. Is like these people do. They just like come back. They just come back and like after years and years and years, like you would be none the wiser.
right, yeah, that's
Like if
true.
I
If you
ate
never
somebody
knew and they
5
never
years
brought it
ago
up,
and I just never brought it up to anybody, like I would know, but nobody else would. And it's like, hell, I mean, you even reference like Dahmer and stuff like that, trying to eat people, or Christ, it's just insane to me to know that this is something that like happens throughout history, and it's more often than I would like to say. Like it is so crazy the amount of stories that I found. Because another one happened in 1907 among like the Sandy Lake First Nation community in Ontario. They had a tribal shaman named Jack Fiddler and his brother Joseph, and they were charged with the murder of Joseph's daughter-in-law, uh, who they pretty much just strangled to prevent her from being possessed by a Wendigo. Like they thought she was
Oh,
transforming into a Wendigo, so they strangled her. And after the
it's like, not
arrest,
today.
Jack, yeah, yeah, and so after that arrest, Jack escaped and strangled himself, and Joseph died from tuberculosis in the prison in 1909, just 2 years later. But that just shows
Dang, man.
the fear that something could like, because that's another portion of this that really makes it interesting, is that there's like we see that the Wendigo infects people through greed and different various measures, not just, oh, I ate a person, I'm a Wendigo now. It's, I am greedy, I want this, I need this, and there's ideals that can infest you with a spirit of a Wendigo. Like this dude in his dream, right? Like that's the claim. But
Right.
this one to me seems more legit and legitimate, since it's an actual tribal, like an Algonquin tribal shaman, and he's pretty much like, look, like your daughter-in-law, like she's a Wendigo, man. And so instead of just being like rational about it or like trying to talk to them, because there's so many stories of this happening across different genres of everything, paranormal and everything, even with like ghosts and spirits and demons possessing people, where a spiritual figure or person that is close to these people would rather kill the person than watch them suffer. And in their eyes, they're doing a good deed and they're saving them and they're saving their soul. But you're still killing a person that is close to you.
Right. And maybe that kind of ties back to like what we were saying earlier too. Maybe that's the difference. Like with the Donner Party, like you were saying, when they came back down, they were still them. They didn't go eat more people, as far as we know. Um, but maybe that's
Hopefully
the
not.
difference here. Is like, to be a Wendigo, you have to want that because it's a greed thing. You want it. You're like, I have to have this. So maybe that's where the difference is. It's between survival and actual desire.
And that could very well be it. And that I think follows the tribal knowledge of Wendigos and kind of their whole thing. I think that follows it way more than just like these. Because I mean, dude, you also gotta think this account is 1907.
Right.
The
Yeah.
last reported case that we talked about was 1879. That is that is not very far away. That is like what
28 years.
28 years, something like that. And then like you take that, and this all began from a story in 1636, which was 200 and yeah, I want to say it's 243 years
243.
ago. Yep, which absolutely insane. And we still have reports, like you were saying, to this day.
Yep, 2021 in September. It says, Ontario, Canada, an experienced outdoorsman claimed to have encountered a tall, emaciated humanoid creature with glowing eyes and sharp fangs while on a solo hiking expedition. No one's been able to verify it because he was hiking by himself, but that he was the last one to make an actual, like, he made a report. He was so spooked by whatever he's seen, he made a report.
That's when it gets a little more real for me. Is like, okay, we all know, if you've listened to podcasts that are similar or listen to like paranormal or true crime, you come to learn that like people only really report something in dire straits or to gain financially.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. It's one or the other. There's not really much in between. It's not like I'm sitting here, I'm like, yeah, Nate, I went up and I was camping and like, I did see a Wendigo, but like, whatever, it's cool. he just walked by, you know,
It
it's
was
whatever.
just
You know, like
Tuesday.
he was up there just chilling, right? Like, so you don't really hear that. You don't hear those experiences because it really, really messes with you, and these stories get held so close because the the thing is like recent reports of these get shot down really quickly because we don't have evidence of like the actual physics. Like if we knew that Sasquatch was here and alive, most science and biologists say the same thing. Like we would have found something like
You can just call
droppings.
me Nate. It's okay. No, I'm just
It's
kidding.
so it's just really funny because I just think that reporting something for these people is just such a dire strait. It and we've seen them, and we'll talk about this later. There's definitely a case I definitely really want to go into about a haunting, and they called the police, and there's a whole ass 6-page police report on how the officer found like was seeing all the things that were going on. Like
Oh dang.
when you start getting written reports and start getting people that are reporting this, and like people start going out and start that like are of notoriety, biologists, scientists, people of power, that's when it starts to get real, in my opinion. And like these reports always happen to get like pretty interesting because one that I had found was for Canada. uh, Apparently there was so many reports of mysterious howls within Ontario's forest, and there's like recorded audio for it and everything, and there's so many like shrieks, like it's like human like shrieks, right? And they're recorded in the wilderness, and they left like this hunter, and all of a sudden like there's more and more people from Ontario hearing this near the forest, and there's multiple reports going in. And it got to the point that the government for Canada sent biologists to go search for the creature. And that to me is insane, to have enough reports to have your government put efforts towards it.
Right? Like if people want to make up stories, they just go to like creepypasta or Reddit. But to go and make a police report, no, you have to believe that.
Absolutely. And that's where I get like this idea that like when you see something and you kind of feel like maybe you're tired, maybe you saw something of different origin, right? Like there's plenty of people that that have made claims like for Sasquatch, for example, um, that it's just a bear standing up and walking around, because they do that sometimes. And people are like, "Oh no, that's not what's like I saw it with my eyes. I viewed it. It looked like this. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't this." And so they kind of get into this headspace of like, this is something that is like concrete evidence. I saw it, therefore it's real. And then other people hear that, and they might already believe uh, in something like that. So it just furthers that paranoia. But it's still super interesting to see like big power, governmental, police getting involved in these different cases. Let's see.
Absolutely.
Um, the next kind of portion is like so there's a term that came by in the early 20th century, and that's Wendigo psychosis, which has been used by psychologists to describe like a culture bound thing among Native and First Nation people that kind of experience delusions of being possessed by this evil spirit, with depression, feeling violent, and a compulsion for human flesh. And in a lot of those cases, it does result in them eating someone. And the syndrome has been diagnosed retroactively in history, just because of the amount of cannibalism in North America. However, it's still kind of disputed by the community of scientists, and they think like it could be something, it could be nothing. But the idea is that, like, again, it kind of goes back to that same. I'll kind of bring it back to I don't know, Nate, if you were kind of grew up with this, but like my parents and my family believed that exorcisms were something that were real, that happened, and that like need to be
Oh,
done.
oh yeah. I won't get too far into it, but I only lived with my dad for a short period of time, and that was he was the one that was super religious, and there was a reason it was a short period of time, and it dealt with that same thing.
And I think it's just very interesting because I also learned when I was in Christianity that like a lot of the time these possessions, when you start looking through the cases and start going through the hauntings of them and going through these different things, and we'll go over more of these in the future, but one of the main things that happens is like these spirits end up after like a psych evaluation, they find out that this person has been schizophrenic, and they see things, they hear things, they can, they experience hallucinations. And to me, like, it's a mixture. I believe it's a mixture of that and their belief coming together to make something entirely different. And I think that's like here is I'm personally on the side that these people must have something, um just maybe health history, mental health history, or something, and their beliefs are also getting into that mix and kind of creating a whirlwind effect of bad shit. I mean, they're thinking about eating people. I mean, imagine, if you believed that the Wendigo spirit was infesting you, and you really truly believe that you were starting to turn or starting to imagine. I think people don't take this into account when watching like paranormal videos or watching like The Exorcist or movies like that, is like when you truly truly believe in something, it can really change you psychologically, physically. I mean, that's why placebos exist. We know placebos
Yeah,
exist because we've used them before. And we have
exactly. Yeah,
research
it's
that
a
shows that it works.
yeah. Yeah, there's been so much research done behind the mentality of people that do cannibalism too. For instance, the National Institute of Health has a article published in PubMed, and I have the PMID and stuff. But they say that it could be cannibalism can be associated with psychiatric disorders, but not only that, it could be associated with substance abuse, antisocial traits, and environmental upbringing can all contribute to this. And that's kind of like
Absolutely.
what you're saying.
And I think it's interesting to take this Wendigo psychosis and apply it to the cases hundreds of years back. Because, I mean, imagine, imagine Swift Runner, the guy that ate his whole family, killed and ate his whole family. If he really truly believed hard enough that he was infested with a Wendigo spirit in his dream, and it forced him to do something. From the fear, it could have been because, again, he's from Alberta. He's definitely probably heard of this tale and probably been told not to do or not let a Wendigo in, or, whatever, like whatever tribal things he's been told. I guarantee you he had a fear of that thing. And one day, maybe he saw something, maybe he felt something, maybe he just had an image pass by through his cabin window or something, and like it triggered that fear. Because I will say, when I was younger, I used to be terrified of demons. Like if I thought magic was involved or I thought something like that, it would trigger me to have like a nightmare or have like sleep paralysis for the night. and so I recognize now that it was a lot of mental things for me. It was a mental thing where I had believed it so much from my upbringing and my Christian background that when it was mentioned, it scared the shit out of me so much that I believed that I was being pinned down by demons at night. I was dreaming of demons coming in, and so I would pray and I would do all these other things when I was a child to get rid of them. And after I did, I believed in the faith so much that it fixed it. So where this is almost so similar to me in such a weird contrasted way with Wendigo.
Yeah, I still refuse to get a welcome mat because when I was growing up, I was told that if you have a welcome mat, it will invite everything in, whether it's welcome or not.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard that before. One of the main things I still do is um, like every once in a while, like I'll remember something in a dream, and I get up and I'm like, oh okay, well I get up and I walk down and I have like some holy water and stuff myself that I keep around, and I'll like every once in a while I'll like spritz it or do sage or do something that is like a holy symbol, and I still do that, even though I don't personally believe that demons are what we think they are. That's my personal opinion. I'll definitely go more into that when we reach that point. But uh, I still do it,
I'm with you.
even though it's just like a little thing where I'm like, I really don't feel like I would have to. Like I feel like I could go about my day with or without it, but it makes me feel better. It does make me feel better. Um, but yeah, there's so much stuff that from this specifically, it tells a story on its own, just with how people are up, like kind of brought up. What are they dealing with? How are they feeling? And what are they doing with it? Right? Which is just insane, man.
Yeah, yeah, it is kind of crazy to have that similar contrast too. And I mean, it's not just us. Like so many people have rituals or things they do that were originally based out of like a fear, basically, that they just keep going with it, not realizing where it comes from. And that I feel like you said, is a really good basically description of this Wendigo. Is it was something they feared, and then it kept hounding them to the point they're like, well, it's obviously real.
Yeah, it's literally just like that feeling of like, I've seen this thing before. I've seen this before. Oh, I've watched this thing. I've seen this. I've seen this come up. I actually saw a Wendigo one time. Oh yeah, like the Wendigo actually infested my daughter-in-law, and we just had to save her, and it was too late, and so we ended up we had to kill her, right? Because like
Choking her.
I did find some stuff on that case. Um, their defense, by the way, in their defense, they said, pretty much, oh, she'd been possessed by a Wendigo spirit, the spirit of a Wendigo, and was craving flesh. She had, while they were choking her, by the way, she had bit one of them and drew blood, and this confirmed to them that she was a Wendigo.
Yeah, she bit me. Obviously evil. Clearly.
That's what I said. I was like, you see this wound on my arm? Yeah, she was trying to eat me. Yeah, but you were strangling her. Did you consider maybe it was like defensive? Nah, she was
my
rabid. She was
she was crazy.
going after me, man. Which
My 3-year-old wouldn't
crazy.
be here anymore, so
I'm just saying, man. There's been more than enough times. Like if I thought everything that bit me was trying to eat me, but I'm just saying my cats
right?
would not be here, man. but
Yeah.
but it's so funny to me
My
because like
wife wouldn't
to
be
me
here,
like
bro.
that defense is
She
so
tries to
weak.
bite me too. Like it
Yeah, I
is
know.
incredibly
Maybe
weak.
she's got the Wendigo spirit.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do what I gotta do then. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna have to put her down. Sorry, man. It's like, damn. I really like that one. Anyway,
I've really come to like you.
but
Oh man.
but dude, it's so interesting. Just with everything that like I've come across and read on the Wendigo, and like I said, it's come by and been a staple in North America, in the northern states, in Canada, Russia, in these snowy biomes. And like one report is in was in Washington during the December months. Somebody had their car break down in the mountain passes, kind of in the deep mountains of Washington. Which, if you've been to Washington, those mountains are
Oh yeah.
crazy. They're beautiful, but they're insane. They get cold,
Yeah,
and they
someone who
never
lives in
melt. Like
Montana, I get it.
that snow, yeah, it's never gone. So, uh, it this guy, apparently his car had broken down. He was waiting. He had to wait essentially 24 hours because they were like, "Hey, it's a snowstorm. We can't send a tow truck up there." And so they gave him some pointers like, "Hey, stay in your car. If you have snacks or whatever or water, make sure it's next to you so that way you can eat and drink and not dehydrate or starve." And during this, he said that he saw something that resembled a person crawling on all fours run across the highway, like this little like sorry, the mountain pass like roadway. And he said that they had essentially run up, snagged a deer, and killed the deer in front of him.
Oh my gosh.
And it this one I think is really interesting too, because he also says like, oh, like it looked me dead in the eyes and it took the deer and ran off. Which, one, I don't know if you ever lifted a deer before. That shit's heavy. Shit is so
Oh yeah, they're
heavy. That is
heavy.
like
And it's all
I
dead
mean,
weight.
yeah, they're not they're not helping you out there. So I was like, this thing just walks up, kills a deer. Oh, sees this dude, picks it up, runs off, and I was like, that's crazy. And one of the things that happened is that the tow driver did see the blood spatter of the deer.
Oh wow. I like to
Yeah.
imagine he killed the deer, picked it up, threw it over his shoulder, and did the whole like points at his eyes and then points at the dude thing and then left.
Hey, just the
Watch
throat slash with his finger.
me.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So Wendigo was there, man. I'm just saying, it's definitely something interesting because that report does have two corroborating people being like, yeah, there was blood, like a big puddle of blood in the snow. So whether or not he's telling
Something
the truth or
screwy this
not,
way comes.
we don't know. And so like he again, like that report is just so crazy because how do you explain that? Like for me, I'm like, what happened? What could have happened is maybe it was a wolf. Maybe because I know that there's some pretty big ass wolves around the
Oh yeah.
northern states.
People often underestimate how big wolves actually are. They're like, "Oh, my German shepherd's about the same size." It's not. I
No, no, no,
promise you
no,
it's
no, no.
not.
It is the size of you. Like a five.
Yeah.
I'm 5'6". I'm a short guy. I know that an average wolf can reach up to almost 6 feet, 6 feet, maybe 6'2". Like
Yeah, I'm
to
huge.
know
I'm
that
6'4",
something
300 pounds. I would not mess with a wolf.
Dude, I wouldn't fuck with one of those dudes. And like I said, like I barely get away with my life with my cats, man. Like I said, they're cannibalistic. They're trying to eat me, trying to eat each other. But yeah, man, it's crazy. And honestly, like that's all the things I had on the Wendigo. Unless you had something else, man.
I do. I got a couple. So there's this article that I found, and I just wanted to go over some of the things here.
Mhm. Yeah.
It says 7 things you didn't know about Wendigos, and this is talesbytravel.com. It's like a travel blog. But like the first thing on the list is Wendigos are cruel spirits. Okay, well yeah, they're eating people. You don't do that if you're Mr. Rogers. Um,
Yeah.
but there's a couple
I don't know,
things on
man.
here that I
Maybe.
actually Oh yeah, Mr. Rogers' secret Wendigo. That's why he's so nice.
Yeah.
False sense of security. But there is a couple on here that I actually didn't know. So, like for instance, number 6 on this list is certain people are easier targets. They find particular individuals easier to possess because they favor those traits like selfishness, greed, gluttony, irresponsible treatment of the environment.
Which gluttony, I
It's
will say, is one of the weirdest ones. Like, if you're just like a little extra hungry and you're like, I just want an extra scoop of, porridge.
yeah.
They're like, oh, he's got a Wendigo in him. Get his ass.
just everyone watching you at Baskin Robbins. Like if this guy gets more than 2 scoops, we're taking him out. Just
They start shaking, holding onto their children. I'm like, dude, if they see me go to Panda Express, dude, they're gonna lose their shit.
Did
I'm
you
just
say
saying, man.
all the chicken? No.
Yeah, I'm gonna need 4 large size of orange chicken, please. I'm like, this guy's a Wendigo. Take him out.
This guy's want to
And
take
just
him out.
immediately, I'm shot on sight. They got a sniper on site at the fucking Panda Express.
Man, Dine and Dashers would be a much more dangerous thing if that.
Yeah. But
And then
such
number
an
5
interesting
on
one.
here is we kind of talked about this a little bit actually, but it says originally Wendigos didn't have antlers, and we knew that. But what I thought was interesting about this one is they say here this change is probably due to the impact of similar creatures that stem from European legends. But then it mentions werewolves, vampires, Lugaroo, and Wolpertingers, none of which have antlers.
Yeah, I think what they're referencing there is actually trying to reference Celtic,
I
which
think so
Celtic
too.
lore has more Scandinavian and more like, I guess you could say Viking, quote unquote, lore, which they do have a lot of unique gods and goddesses and different belief systems that have a lot of antlers. So I think Celtically, it probably makes more sense. I mean, like
Right.
Loki specifically, I think would be a huge thing if you were like again in Scandinavia, where it's the same, where it's still a myth. It's still one of those cryptids that is known in Scandinavia. I believe that you could take something that's like, oh, it's Loki's children, because they're usually evil. Usually, not saying all the
Usually.
time, but um,
Every
but
rule
yeah.
has
So that
exceptions.
takes into some. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, hey man, but yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like they might be referencing that versus like trying to reference that versus these other essentially creatures that are like come on man, like that not a single one of these looks like a fucking Wendigo or
Right.
has antlers
Or
for Christ's sake, like
exactly. Um I there's just 4 more on here that I kind of just want to touch on, but those were the big ones. Number 4 just says Wendigos are cold and stanky. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all it says.
I feel like that's true. I mean, if you've eaten, I don't know if you've ever. I'm pretty sure we've all experienced this. You open your fridge, and that chicken you left in the drawer is gone bad, and you're like, oh, oof. Like I imagine if you're covered in that constantly, but it's people,
Right.
you probably don't smell too good, and
Yeah.
you're probably cold in the heart of Washington mountains or Quebec or Ontario. You're probably cold
Yeah.
being naked in the mountain.
Weird. That's hilarious. So now I'm gonna have a headcanon that Wendigo's nipples are constantly perky. So thanks
Yeah,
for
man,
that.
it's true. They got 6 of them, just like cats, dude.
So this one says it's possible to stop the transition so long as you haven't eaten people yet. There's a method that's believed to halt the transformation. In Cree folklore, it's believed that to purge the Wendigo spirit, you need to feast on fatty animal meats, or better yet, animal grease. This will cause your body to eject the evil spirit by vomiting ice. And that sounds awful.
Actually, I think the Cree way to do it, just like our friends in the 1900s, is just to choke them out.
Just choke him out. Ah! I'm healing
Uh,
you.
I be healed by my strength. Yeah, no, but I keep going back on that, man, and like there's definitely ways. I guarantee you they had ways to like subvert it, which I don't know if people know.
I've,
I'll just state this: I did go to school for my culinary arts. Um, the difference between animal fat and animal grease is animal grease comes from the like when you boil down fat, you take off the solids
it's just the
and
liquid underneath, like
it's just the
the
liquid.
schmaltz stuff.
Imagine drinking pure like canola oil. That's
Oh,
essentially what you're drinking, and yeah, you'd probably vomit. Your body is not
yeah.
meant to drink pure oil. Who would have known?
Pennzoil. It's good for the soul. No,
If it's
that
good
was a
enough for
joke,
my
folks.
car, it's
Please.
good enough for me.
Yeah, that was. I'd like to state for possibly legal reasons that was a joke. I don't condone, don't consume Pennzoil.
Yeah, don't
um,
do that. Not sponsored.
uh, yeah, exactly.
Uh,
um, and then the last two is a Wendigo's weakness. It says, "Take it out by piercing its icy heart. You'll not only kill them this way, but set free the spirit of the person." And the very last
okay, so
one,
just kill
which
the
is
guy.
the yeah, just murder him. Just a
Yeah,
little regular
just
murder.
murder. You know what's insane too is a lot of these cryptids and creatures and stuff have a weakness to silver, which I will say well, it's not only silver, it's iron as well. Because at the
Right.
time, tribes and stuff, I don't know if you know this, they're not really working with iron. So a lot of the
Yeah, no, it's
times,
mostly
these
stone,
cryptids and
bone, wood.
creatures, yeah. So a lot of the times you'll hear like even vampires also technically have a weakness to iron, which you could kill a vampire with a sword, or it. But it's the funny part is that like you can pretty much kill anybody with a sword. You know, I don't
Right.
know if you. But it's just funny. But it's like, yeah, if you stab somebody through the heart, it gets rid of the Wendigo. It
Yeah.
also gets
In a
rid of the
future,
person.
yeah, in a future episode, if we do go about vampires, I have a fun fact about them and iron and silver and stuff.
We'll
But the
definitely have to
last thing
go over
about
it.
yeah, the last thing about Wendigos on here, which I like, part of it is like made me go huh, and then another part of it I was like, okay, yeah, that's I guess that's kind of obvious. Is Wendigos can be contagious.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think that was something Until Dawn, the video game, actually got right. As
yeah,
it's an
yeah,
infectious
Wendigos
thing,
can
like
infect others.
yeah. Which
Yeah, it
that
says
is
that they
something
like
that
to.
like isn't common though. Yeah, I don't think a lot of
Right,
people know that.
right. They say that uh they prefer. I don't know where they're getting this information. I wish there was a source, but it says they prefer to infect, if they're going to infect other people with it, children, because they don't make much of a meal. That's what it says here, and I don't know where they're getting their information. But I thought this was an interesting article about the Wendigo, and there was a couple of things on here I didn't know about.
I think it make I mean if you take it from a logical sense, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you want to infect something that's like I mean, if it's a spirit, we see it all the time. Possession of children is like very, very, very common comparatively to adults. And
Right.
it's just because they're more influenced by things and they're more easy to mold to you know, what you say and what you do. So, I think that's one of those things that's like we can probably take it with like a grain of salt and just kind of rack it up to be like, oh well, they're just more impressionable to. But which is
Right.
odd though, because it also kind of I'm gonna bring it back again to that first guy, Swift Runner. Like he
Swift
killed
Runner.
his family, right? If it's interesting because it's like if a Wendigo can infect people, why wouldn't it want to infect more people?
Yeah,
It's kind of
exactly.
like
Where's my
the zombie
30 Days a
complex
Night
for
movie,
me.
but it's all Wendigos?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Is like it kind of reminds me of like the zombie complex. Like if a creature can repopulate, it will repopulate.
Yeah.
But I guess it's also a spirit. So what could you say? You could argue that it's not really a creature, that it's more of a demonic possession type deal. You could
Yeah,
argue
that's
it.
true
I
too.
think.
I'm also surprised they haven't done anything with the fact that there's like an island, like it says it's near Minnesota, so it's probably somewhere in the Great Lake or something, and the Great Lake's up there.
Yeah.
But it's called Wendigo. It's Windigo, and I'm like, dude, Wendigo on Wendigo? Why not? That's something that you should have already done,
Damn, the missed opportunity for real.
right?
And yeah, man, I mean those that's interesting. I mean, I do remember a lot of those being a thing, and I know that it's not really commonplace to say that they can infect people, but I know that there's some representation that's pretty good. I haven't seen anything like a really good Wendigo movie yet or anything that's really and I'm a big horror fan, and so
Same.
for me, I wish the Wendigo got more attention in media like that. Like, if there was like a really long feature length film, I think even doing the story from Swift Runner would be incredible. I mean, I
Oh
think you
yeah.
could do it, or even if it's like whatever the circumstances. I think it's a great cryptid. I think it's a wonderful first cryptid that we can take care of. Uh, I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward
Supernatural did an
to
okay job.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that episode. It was pretty good. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
yeah,
it. I
they
think it was a good representation in terms of like, and they had good practical effects for it. So I do
right.
gotta applaud them for it. But again, out of countless years we have like one one thing to reference, and of course I think it's really, again, probably one of my favorites. For our first cryptid file, that's the Wendigo. I do want to say, like, I had a blast doing this, and I can't wait to do more episodes. It's gonna be super fun. Uh, we're definitely gonna have to see what ones we want to do next, man, because
Yes, I am
there's so
very
many.
excited.
But I do want to thank you for coming on here with me, being a co-host on the show. Super fun. It's gonna be a ton. It's gonna be super awesome to be able to just go over these different things, have some stories, talk about some stuff, get some things going, and I really hope that everyone had a good time listening to a delve deeper.
Yes, thank you guys so much. I'm super happy we're doing this.
And with that, everybody, I'm gonna say good luck, everyone, and make sure you don't choke somebody out if you think they're Wendigo. Don't follow. What was it? It was like six. Don't kill, don't kill people. I think that's the
Yeah,
moral of the
don't.
story.
And if they
Don't
bite
kill any
you, they
people.
might. If they
It
bite
might
you,
be an
they don't
accident.
need
It
to
could
be
be a
choked.
child. I don't know, man. The Wendigo, it goes crazy. They start going crazy once they have that taste for blood, man. They're going. But yeah, thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time on A Delve Deeper.